Thank you. Honourable Member Shri Manish Tewari ji.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, sir. Mr. Chairperson, sir, I don't think anybody has a quibble with this bill. As Minister Jaishankar explained, that it is essentially to make us legally compliant with the mandates of the United Nations Security Council and the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force. But, Mr. Chairperson, sir, behind the original bill which this bill seeks to amend lies an incredible story of multi-partisanship that we as a country need to celebrate. It's a story of how we, first of all, created, then nurtured, sustained our strategic autonomy without giving up our principled position towards a world where there is verifiable, universal and comprehensive nuclear disarmament. And this is a story which started at the inception of the Indian nation itself in 1948, when the Atomic Energy Commission was established. In 1954, you had the Atomic Energy Establishment in Trombay, which is now called the Bhabha Atomic Research Centre, which was brought into existence. 1962, this House legislated the Atomic Energy Act, and after the 1962 Sino-Indian conflict and the 64 test, the nuclear test which was carried out by China at Lap Nor on the 16th of October 1964, we commenced our nuclear weapons program. And that culminated in the first peaceful nuclear explosion in 1974 under the leadership of then Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi. And then in 1998, when Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, we decided to make the de jure de facto by carrying out 2 nuclear tests on the 11th of May and the 13th of May 1998. And why do I say de jure de facto to de jure is because some people would recall the history of Operation Brass Tacks in 1986 and the Robert Gates mission of 1990, which essentially sent out a very, very clear signal that not only did we have the capacity in the early 90s, but unfortunately, so did our Western neighbour across the border. But the incredible thing, Mr. Chairperson, sir, is that all throughout this long journey, unlike Pakistan, which opened a nuclear Walmart, it had a rogue scientist called A.Q. Khan, who was not only accused, but finally even held prima facie guilty by Pakistan itself for proliferating nuclear and missile technology. India has been able to maintain an impeccable track record insofar as non-proliferation is concerned. And I think that was the reason why in 2008, when India negotiated the Indo-US nuclear agreement under the leadership of then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, and the minister was, I think, then Joint Secretary Americas and had played a very important role in bringing that agreement to fruition. Not only were we the first non-nuclear weapon state in order to be able to conceptualize an agreement which effectively smashed the entire architecture of nuclear apartheid, which was created when the first peaceful nuclear explosion was carried out with the formation of the London Suppliers Group, but we were able to also get a clean waiver from the Nuclear Suppliers Group with regard to that Indo-US nuclear agreement. And that brings me, Mr. Chairperson, sir, to a couple of questions which I have for the Minister, which of course may go beyond the, beyond the amplitude of this bill. My first question is that, unfortunately, after the 2008 Indo-US nuclear agreement and the clean waiver that we got from the Nuclear Suppliers Group, we do not seem to have made much progress with regard to getting membership of that particular organization. My colleague, Honorable Supriya Suleji, had alluded to some of the obstacles that are there, certain countries which are opposing India's membership of the NSG. I would want the Minister to really try and bring this House up to speed as to whether there has been any progress between 2018, when the summit was held in Kazakhstan, if I remember correctly from the top of my head, till 2022, in our efforts to get membership of the nuclear suppliers group. My second question, of course, which was alluded to by some members of this House, given that we've had this impeccable track record of non-nuclear proliferation, and coupled with that, we have maintained a very high degree of exactitude insofar as our delivery systems are concerned. The recent inadvertent launch of the BrahMos missile, which landed in Mia Chunu in Pakistan, and which, if you go by reports in the public domain, could have not only endangered civilian aircrafts which were in the vicinity of the trajectory of this missile, but also may have invited a retaliatory launch, given that, unlike us, our Western neighbor actually has a first-use posture. If the Minister could actually throw light as to what steps has the government taken after this inadvertent incident to ensure that something of this sort does not get repeated in future. My penultimate question is with regard to something strange that I discovered while I was researching this bill. In the year 2018, in the Bodh Gaya blast case, the Weapons of Mass Destruction Act was invoked by the National Investigating Agency. In fact, they invoked Section 14, 17, and 19, and the public reports which are there, or whatever is there in the public domain, is completely ambiguous about really what happened after these sections were invoked. If the Minister could enlighten us, whether charge sheets were filed in terms of these relevant sections of the WMD Act, because as I understand it, the Weapons of Mass Destruction Act is essentially to ensure that there is no proliferation of chemical, biological, radiological or nuclear weapons. And since this was a first that our National Investigating Agency had actually invoked provisions of this Act, if the Minister could enlighten the House as to what has been the progress qua those negotiations. My last point would relate to our no first use posture. In the August of 1999, in fact, on the 17th of August 1999, after our nuclear tests, India had put a draft nuclear doctrine in place, which was then formalized on the 4th of January 2003 by the Cabinet Committee of Security. And since then, we've had a posture of recessed deterrence and no first use. In the year 2014, just before the elections, in the manifesto which was brought out by the Bharatiya Janata Party, if I recall correctly, on page 39 in the sub-paragraph, there was a certain amount of ambiguity with regard to this no first use posture. Subsequently, former Defence Minister Mr. Parrikar, when he was releasing a book, had actually gone a little further and really suggested that the no first use posture possibly could be under consideration. And even the current Defence Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, on the 16th of August 2019, had alluded to it, or alluded to some ambiguity in it after his visit to Pokhran. The reason why I am posing these questions is because all this has created a consternation, and given the fact that our neighbourhood is extremely becoming difficult, it would be enlightening to hear from the Minister as to whether we continue to maintain a no first use posture, or is there any rethink in government which he would like to share with the House. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Yes.